So in the app I've been working on, you can use a single finger to draw a curve. If you tap on that curve, the curve itself is selected, and you can drag it around with one finger. The distance you are away from the curve determines how fast the curve moves in relation to your finger. So as I select far away, the curve moves a very small distance compared to my finger distance, which allows me very precise control. In addition to being able to drag a curve, while I'm dragging, I can drag the slider on the left-hand side to both drag and rotate, or I can just use the slider by itself to rotate. So I can switch between rotation, translation, and then simultaneously rotating and translating. To refine the curve itself, though, I can tap a second time on the curve to introduce a control point. So this control point, as I drag it, will have an effect on other parts of the curve. The farther I move the point, the greater the effect on the rest of the curve. But I can change that and override it explicitly by using the slider on the left-hand side. So if I drag the slider up, it will increase the range of effect, of the smoothing effect on the curve, and if I drag it down, it will restrict the smoothing effect. So here I'm just dragging a little piece of the curve. Move it up and I drag a larger section of the curve. Now as you notice, there's a tangent line that appears when I drag a curve, so I can drag that tangent line itself, just reshape the curve, and I can drag the tangent handles on the curve to reshape the curve. It's also possible, as I'm dragging this curve, to put a second finger down to start rotating it. So this makes it a lot easier. You don't have to actually go and stop what you're doing. You can drag, rotate, drag, rotate. In theory, you could do these both at the same time, but I found for precision, it was better to turn off translation while you were doing rotation with two fingers. Now, it's possible that you want to introduce a point at the top, and you don't want this to be a smooth curve. So right now, if I smooth that out, it's going to blend it smoothly with the rest of the curve, but I might want to introduce a point there. So the way to introduce a point is to tap a second time. So what that does is it splits the tangent. So now I have a tangent for the left-hand side and the right-hand side with their own drag controls. If I tap again, it goes back to being a smooth curve. Now, you can also do that by dragging one tangent and then with the second finger dragging the other tangent to explicitly split the curve, or split the tangent into two sections. Another way to achieve a similar effect is if I take this point that I've introduced here, I mentioned before, as you drag up, you're smoothing the curve, but if you drag downward, you'll cross through a point where you now introduce an inflection. And this inflection has no tangent at that point. So here we have two tangent lines, here we have no tangent at all. If you tap on this point, you can introduce tangent lines. Sometimes that's useful, sometimes that's not. So for example, if you had a straight line, these two endpoints have no tangents on them. You can drag them around. If you introduce a tangent line at an endpoint, then as you drag it around, it doesn't stay as a straight line anymore. So sometimes it's useful to have the tangent line be there, and sometimes it's not. If you split a line that is a straight line, you'll introduce subsequent straight line segments. Again, any straight line segment like this can be inflated into a smooth curve. One interesting property of the inflation of these curves would be if you draw something like this, and for this tangent we make it be vertical, take this tangent to be vertical, and drag it up to here. Then if I introduce a point in the middle, as I inflate this, this will inflate towards being a perfect circle on it. So if I actually place that point directly in the middle, I'll be creating a half circle. So the inflation is trying to be smart and achieve an inflation that is conceptually a very smooth inflation. And once again, when you have a smooth line like this, if you drag down, you introduce a cusp, and if you keep dragging down, you get to the point that it's a sharp curve. So it makes it very easy to blend between smooth things